How about your Facebook, YouTube Live? The dialogue is back at you live this week. Thank you all for joining what was a great show last week with Coach Frank Kepler. But I'm just quicking in the boots today. I can't even talk about how excited I am about tonight's show. I just wish my partner in crime, KV, was here with me. But let me just say, we're going to celebrate every Monday night this month Black excellence in this nation, and we're going to talk about some of the. We're not talking about Benjamin Banneker and Frederick Douglass, and we're not going way back there. We want to talk about some of the contemporary people, some of the contemporary things that are being done, because we got Black excellence all around us. We certainly would not disdain or not represent the works of a Martin Luther King or Rutledge Pearson, our local heroes, and we're going to talk about them. We're going to do a profile on them weekly. But tonight, we're going to celebrate Black law enforcement excellence in the field of law enforcement and excellence in the field of the U.S. military. We want to shout that out, and I'm just excited right now. She's probably one of the biggest figures I've had on this show we've had here, and I'm just so excited to be here. She just doesn't know how much we honor and respect the work that she's done. And perhaps when we pivot over on the other half of the break and talk about excellence in the military as far as Blacks are concerned, there's a gentleman that if he's able to pull it off, humble, you would never know he was a Navy SEAL and the things that he probably had to do. But we want to celebrate our accomplishments in this nation. And at the midway point, I can't even do "Are you serious" for this clown, because there's nothing serious about anything he does. But we'll find some category to talk about some category to put it under. Right now, we're blessed to have Miss Lakesha Burton. She is a retired chief from the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office, and she's here to share with us some of the greatness, some of our fantastic accomplishment in the field of law enforcement. Miss Keisha, how you doing tonight?
Hey, I am wonderful. It's extra special being on this show with you tonight.
Well, I wish your coworker was here with us. It would really be special. I know he's regretting he can't be here, but we understand the assignment. But you just don't know, Dozell, you don't know how long I've been wanting to have her here, because I know she has a vast array of knowledge and experiences to share with us tonight, and we're getting right into it. Ms. Keisha, one of the things, I guess, I just signed off of a call with Faith in Florida, and we have had to pick up the void of, now that in Florida it's no big deal because we've been denied Black history in the schools the last 2 or 3 years now, but nationally they're feeling the impact. As long as God gives breath to this body, I'm going to accentuate us in our accomplishments in this nation. Not only it'll be a heightened sense during the month of February, but every time we come on, we're going to press it. And you are one that we see as a sterling example of Black excellence in your field. Just tell us a little bit about your career and some of your joys and accomplishments, and then we'll take off with the dialogue.
Oh my goodness, we need a lot of time to talk about it. So
do it. I know there are many.
No, look, I was so blessed. Obviously, I'm retired now, but I was just really blessed to be able to be in a profession that was my heart's desire at a very young age. You know, if you would have asked me when I was a young kid, about 5 or 6, what I wanted to be, I would have told you emphatically that one day I wanted to be a police officer, or I wanted to run track in the United States Olympics because I was super fast. I was the fastest kid in elementary school, and my coach hyped me up and told me I was going to the Olympics, you know. But, you know, I have not been shy about talking about a lot of my trials and tribulations as a young person, which has made me who I am today, you know. But to get to my profession, I had to endure childhood sex abuse when I was young. 11 to 14, I was abused. Had a baby at 15 years old. You know, I was lost, angry, every negative emotion you can think of when you've been impacted by that type of trauma. And, I thought my dream of becoming a police officer was a long shot at that point. I experienced, drugs, alcohol, homelessness, and hopelessness. And in 1992, I wanted to end my life, but thank God that I was invited to a church revival. And I tell people I walked in that church that night a victim and walked out a victor. And I was on fire for God and changed my life around and was able to receive a full basketball scholarship to college. And there is where I studied criminal justice. And when I when I graduated from college at the University of Central Florida in Orlando, I remember applying with the Orlando Police Department, and they would not hire me because I had an arrest on my record. And I remember going to talk to my pastor at the time in Orlando. I told him what happened. Of course, I was distraught. And he said, why don't you go back to Jacksonville? I know the sheriff there. He's the first Black sheriff ever in Jacksonville. I said, okay. And he literally called Nat Glover on the phone while I was standing in his office, gave me the phone, and I was able to talk to Nat Glover, the first Black sheriff of Duval County. And I talked with him for 5 minutes. I told him my story, and he said, come home. I'm going to give you an opportunity. And I tell you, I had never driven a U-Haul truck, but I got in there, packed up my stuff and my baby at the time, and I sped up I-4 all the way 95 northbound to Jacksonville. And I started my career back in 1999. So there's so many people to celebrate in terms of Black history, and if it were not for many of them, we stand on their shoulders. And I certainly, love Nat Glover for giving me the opportunity. And, I had a 24-year awesome career in law enforcement.
I thought that you had preceded Sheriff Glover. I thought that you were on prior to his coming. But hearing things like that, and Madam Producer, if you can grab a picture of him and we can upload it, how could I have missed Sheriff Glover? In Nat Glover, he's a former sheriff of Duval County.
Actually, she has a picture of me and him when he swore me in.
Oh, is that the picture that you have sent?
Yes. Listen, I was very young and very skinny. I was very young. It was a long time ago.
Well, you talk to a guy who got to lose 50 plus pounds. So don't. Let me. When you said this, I remember that. The ULC. So that's Sheriff Nat Glover. He's the first Black sheriff. Should have been the first Black mayor of Duval County. Well, not. Let's see. I think Brown was while he was still. Anyway, he went on to a distinguished career. Was he term limited out as sheriff in Jacksonville?
He was, yes.
Okay, so he was term limited, but it didn't stop his sense of service. He went on to be a legendary president over at Edward Waters University, and he just has too much to offer. He has too much to offer, and I'm so grateful that he continued his career in leadership in my beloved hometown. And your story is just more than touching. I remember that we were both Knights. I thought you were, for some reason, I always thought that you attended college with your friend Jenny at that school over there, that former all-girls school in Tallahassee. I'm a Knight. I graduated from UCF also, but this is what it's about.
Awesome. That's that special connection, honey.
There it is. Yes. There it is. Go get it.
He was instrumental in terms of how I saw my career. I remember after we graduated from the academy, they wanted majority of the minorities in my class to go to narcotics. And I was thinking, I don't want to sell drugs. I don't want to go undercover. So I went and had a meeting with him, and he met with me, and I just shared with him, what my desires were. And he sat down with me, and he went through my short-term and long-term goals. And really, he set me on the path of thinking long-term, thinking about how do I make impact? And I understood from conversating with him that in order to make impact and influence, you have to have rank within the sheriff's office, And so we talked about, within 5 years, I needed to have my master's degree. I needed to study and prepare for the sergeant's test and so forth. And I followed his advice.
Wow. Keisha, and I wanted to, how could I've not even been thinking about in that level? When I went to work there down in Central Florida, that city, I hate even mentioning it, but I was a DVPD. And that was the thing my dad said to me. I went down there with my 2-year, and he was saying, you're going to finish that degree so you can make rank. And I went to a department. They had 2 black head sleeves. A sergeant had been like, I guess in that day, what they call a DEI, affirmative action promotion for a while. And there was 1 corporal in it. For the duration of time I was there, I knew that they had their own quotas within. And so that never was my goal. I just wanted to do some work in some specialized assignments. My desire was to be a detective. We were talking in pre-production about the Houston Police Department. It was at that time, they did nationwide recruiting because they had gotten sued for making a Hispanic brother swim across the barrio. And part of the suit with the federal government was part of the settlement was that they had to bring in 2,000 officers from the outside. That was ancient times, 77. And they came to the University of North Florida while I was there. And I caught the fever. I went out there, got hired, and I didn't go because while I was out there, Daytona called me to come to work that week, and my parents were like, "Yeah, you stay close to home," and that was all right to me. So then, about a year and a half into the career there, some changes went on. I saw some tendencies. I said, I always got a recourse. I'll go out to Houston. I went out there that time, and the guy said, "Listen, man, we've seen what you've been able to do in the police Olympics in Florida. You come here, you get out of the police academy here, you got to be Texas certified. Then we're putting you directly after field training. You're going straight into community relations. So you'll be on our basketball team, which we use as a recruiting tool to help us bring officers across the nation. We go and play junior colleges, and that team was stacked with possibly G League players. And that just blew my head up, but that just excited me to want to beyond measure. But then the chief put me in the detective bureau, which was my only. But my dad had been saying to me all along, "Don't get sidetracked by that. Make rank, make rank." I knew I was going to, once I got that degree, I was headed off to seminary, but it was a different situation. I'm just glad you had a mentor and there was a path and somebody to show you and that you could make rank. Where we were, we knew we existed under some quotas. To kind of talk about how we have evolved racially in the field of law enforcement, how doors have been opening. And some of the pioneers that helped to make that happen. If you could.
Well, I'll start with, so when I was recruited because they were advertising this minority scholarship program. They were looking for more minorities. And I was fortunate enough to be one of the ones who were selected. So, and they ain't DEI, they didn't lower the standards. I was well qualified, you know what I mean? But it was just a tool. Obviously, I was straight out of college, so I didn't have the money to go through the police academy at the time because you had to pay. So I'm forever grateful for that. And Ken Jefferson was the one who recruited me to the Jacksonville Sheriff's Office. So, and let me tell you, I tell people all the time, I came into the profession back in 1999. And it was tough. I remember a white male officer saying to me, he said, "I don't know why they gave you a uniform." So I don't know if he said that to me because I was black or female or both. But my mindset was, this is why I need to prove myself, right? And what I did, that motivated me to begin to study. And I became a sergeant. Actually, I was the only 4th Black female sergeant when I got promoted. And I remember that same officer who said those things to me, I ended up becoming his supervisor and was able to go to his retirement party, but
Wow.
obviously, back then, a lot of the mindset about women, it wasn't favorable, because they thought that women, weren't capable, and that comes, law enforcement has evolved in terms of, especially for women too, because, when women, the first women that were hired to work in law enforcement, they couldn't put people in jail. They hired women to work in the corrections department to do clerical work or to take care and babysit babies, that would be with family or somebody who was arrested. So
These are sworn officers.
Sworn officers, but we could not arrest, So when I started, obviously there were some challenges, it was, I think, like I said, I was only the 4th Black female sergeant, the only 2nd Black female lieutenant, and I think the 4th Black female assistant chief. You think about 200 years of, almost 200 years of, this agency being in place. And so it was, it was hard, but it was important, and obviously the more we see people that look like us that are excelling, you're able to really see yourself in those shoes. And I had people that I knew that had accomplished rank, and I knew I could do it too.
Well, we were talking post, and I was saying how I remember the days in Jacksonville when the officers had the white cars, the white officers had white cars. We had older, dark, they were black cars, and the precinct was located over in the Blodgett homes.
Right.
And,
yeah.
To see the department to have evolved and the city to be open-minded enough to bring in a Black sheriff, and for what you just opened with was just so encouraging. Yeah. So really encouraging.
And it took Nat Glover to break down those. First of all, it took courage to even run for office. Okay. Especially in that time, that culture in that time period, it took so much courage. But when he got the job, he began to change the culture of law enforcement, because when I started, I talk about community police, and I'll talk about that until I die, because it is so important in terms of building trust between community and law enforcement. But when I started my career, community policing was the fabric, of our community. That was our mindset of the agency. So he did a great job, and he had to endure so much when he was elected. People didn't want to accept him as a sheriff. I remember hearing about the N-word being spray painted on his car, on the doors, and, people just being disrespectful. It was just really, he had to endure a lot for me to be able to wear my stars when it was time for me to wear the stars.
I had no idea that exists now. I love my hometown, but I know the history of there, and I know since I got a few years on you, I know when it was really evolved.
Well, I don't think I was prepared mentally, because when I was in training, I remember patrolling out in Ocean Way, and my FTO, my field training officer, was a short white female. We went up to this guy's house, and he opened a door, and he had a picture of Black people picking cotton. It was in a picture frame, and he looked at her, and he said, "Well, she can come in, but that end can't." And I was just thinking to myself, "Oh my goodness!" And thank God for the Caucasian officer. She said, "Well, sir, this is my partner. If she can't come in, you don't want service today." Wow. And that really was a turning point for me, and I loved it. But, I wasn't used to that,
So you cited 2 instances. One, the negative, where you became the supervisor for this guy who was small-minded, and now a small person, but a big-hearted person who stood up for you. What was the overall, when you went on the department, because you had, like you said, you had the double whammy. What was the overall sentiment when you went into law enforcement from your fellow white officers and Sheriff Glover's ability to be an authoritative figure from the white rank and file staff?
I think that indirectly, many just felt like women weren't strong enough, that we couldn't do the job. But see, I was different because by the time I was hired, I had endured so much in my life and I had overcome so much that I had like this resiliency. And I thought to myself, like when you're in the academy, they do like what they call red men, where they fight, they box, because you have people that become police officers who've never been in any type of altercation, physical altercation. But I remember telling the instructor, I said, I want to fight a man.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
That's right. And they set me up with a man, because, I had to prove myself because I knew the mindset of some of my fellow officers. But, when you get in there and you are proficient and you do the same things that they're able to do, then you have to earn that respect, basically. And honestly, I didn't want them to treat me like a girl, right?
Yes.
I didn't want them to do that, treat me like the boys, and I was able to do everything physically and just everything they were able to do. And when you do that, you gain this respect. And I think over time, women that police departments have been hiring, they're strong, they're courageous, they're proficient. They can do this job. And more times than not, a lot of them are more stronger and smarter and more courageous than some of the men, to be honest.
How about the color aspect of it at JSO, a culture that I'm very familiar with? What did the color aspect? How tough was that amongst your non-Black officers dealing with them and working?
Yeah, I think it is tough, and I can just only share my personal experiences. Like if I'm going to training, we're going to the academy and the room is full of all white males and you have 2 Blacks, I reflect on when we were talking about, what we were talking about, a subject around race relations, and you're sitting in the classroom with people who see through a different lens and don't have the same experiences as us, a lot of folks that were in my class, they didn't have the experience of going into a store and people looking at you and following you around. They didn't have the experience of being pulled over and the officer don't have a reason, so they don't come to the table with all those experiences, So I think it was tough. But for me, I made up in my mind early on that I was going to use my voice, right? So I was always the one who was not afraid to speak up. And because I feel like our experiences are our truth and nobody can take that away. You know what I mean? And I think that over time, when you gain the respect of people, they start to listen. And when they listen, they start to it starts to sink in and they start being open to other people's perspectives, because, I tell people all the time, they say, oh, sexism, racism, all that stuff is not real. It is real in any profession. And majority of the women have experienced a lot of that, especially Black women. If you put all the Black female officers, let's just say from that time when I got hired, if you put them all in the same room right now and have conversations and ask them some questions, 9 times out of 10, we all have experienced some of those same uncomfortable experiences because of the color of our skin, no doubt.
But let me. So how was the acceptance level for Chief or for Sheriff Glover amongst the whites in the rank and file as you observed while you were there? Because he was pretty freshly elected once you got there, a year or 2 in, maybe.
I think that he was starting on his 2nd term, so the worst of the worst had happened to him. And I think, again, because he came in, he had proved himself to them to be honest and fair, and he held people accountable, and he was still proficient in his skill set, and people saw that he was making a difference, so I think that over time people began to respect him, so it wasn't overtly, anything that I saw, but people, you always hear a little chatter and stuff like that for people who got bad attitudes. But other than that, I wasn't there during the times he really had a lot of challenges in terms of race.
So when I was in Daytona, they were quick to remind me that it hadn't been too long that we were not allowed over on the beach side after dark. And to find that existed in Fort Lauderdale, which I thought to be a more progressive area, to find that was something we were just discussing at the day that broke sometime in the early to mid 60s. And the other side was that we were not, we had just maybe 10 or 15 years in, had the, even though you were assigned as a policeman, you did not have the right to arrest white people until like the late 60s. And that was unbelievable. That was really, Daytona being a spring break capital, maybe they didn't want that reputation or what. It's just, so when we look at history like this, people really need to know from whence we've come and how people such as yourself surface through it all to make Black excellence along the way.
Right. And look, I heard all those stories. I've read a lot of the research, so I'm very familiar with our agency, how, the Black officers couldn't arrest a white person. It just blows my mind. And they were able to persevere. That's why I have so much respect for Aretha, our first Black female police officer with the sheriff's office. We're good friends. And if you just hear her story, it is so heartbreaking what she had to endure. But because of that, she really opened up the doors and paved the way for us.
There always has to be somebody. You hate to say it like that, but it's almost like a sacrificial, to get this thing off the rolling. I remember the night Dr. King left us like it was yesterday. And as unfortunate and as heartbreaking as that was, I think we escalated our progress in America because this was 3 years after the after Civil Rights Act bill was
right.
And it was not just law at this point. I think there was enough sentiment across the country. This was a good man. He wasn't talking about burning cities down or the self-sufficient thing. He was saying, let's love and be together. And so sometimes it takes people like this, sister, to get us where we are. The chief I was asking you about was Chief Lee Brown. I don't know if you remember him. Lee Brown was the chief of police in Atlanta at the time of the Atlanta child murders. And that recognition propelled him to Houston. Houston went all in on the diversity thing. When I talked about they were mandated to hire 2,000 officers, I think it was 12. The percentage was something like 75%, 60%, something had to be minorities.
Right.
And that's why it was easy for me, young man, no, nothing on my record, anything. And at the point, you had a decent size, we went a little bit. It was easy for me to get in, and then went through the rigorous training. But Lee Brown, then after the Atlanta thing, became the chief of police in Houston. And kind of presided over that whole changing of the culture from the good old boy, you wear boots, network to, and then he went on to become the chief of police in New York. And he worked as it wasn't President Clinton's cabinet, but he went into cabinet. I think he retired from there. But we kind of held him as somebody to look to. Nationally, because we had Nat Glover. I wasn't living in Jacksonville, but I was proud of the accomplishment. Well, who are some other law enforcement officers across the nation who we could look up to have risen in the ranks? That come to mind.
Someone that I really admired was the police chief in Orlando. And her name has Val Demps.
Val Demps,
yes. So again, like I said, when you see somebody look like you, like it makes a reality. And I remember when she became the first Black female police chief of Orlando Police Department. I was just like, wow. And I never thought that I was going to run for sheriff, but I saw that. But I wanted to back up and talk about how very important it is for diversity. You remember what happened in Ferguson, right? You had a majority all white male police department. But let me tell you, if you don't have diversity, especially in any profession, but we're talking about law enforcement, you cannot effectively serve the community as a whole, right? Because if you're not going to talk about diversity and talk about Black issues and that impact the Black community, and you don't have Black officers, how in the world are you going to serve the community? It's not going to happen. So all this nonsense about diversity is just, it's unbelievable to me.
Keisha, if I could just get you to hold on, we're going to come back after the break. We're going to continue. We're going to squeeze in some talk about Black excellence in the military, but we got a superstar on, and we're going to keep talking. We'll be right back. We're going to break. We'll see you in a second. GoGigaWorld.com. They're the ones who got all of your virtual needs. Listen, they make Mr. Freeze here look good. They got you. They will make you look good. They will be your marketing agent. They'll do your web building. They get all your publicity out. And listen, I know the pandemic's over. In fact, we're going to do a whole look back at the pandemic. So in March, but a lot of virtual stuff is here to stay. They even got your Zoom accommodations. They got you fixed up. They record, splice, edit your work, whatever you need. GoGigaWorld.com. The Toyas and the Marquez and team, they do an excellent job. GoGigaWorld.com. Contact them today, okay? All right, I want to take a second. We're not going to do Are You Serious? But I kind of want to just do a little bit of a word of encouragement to my brothers and sisters out here. We're under a surreal attack. It's not unreal, it is surreal. We're down here where there are many immigrants. And as a church person, as a pastor, we all knew ways of trying to assist our brothers and sisters who have come to this country and done well and made the American dream work for them and have become good Americans. And to have laws or executive orders now where we can't accommodate them or assist them through this process, it's almost as though we're living in a Gestapo type environment. But I came to tell you today, and every day there's a new craziness that's going on. There's something crazy that's going on. FBI agents, because they handled their assignment, they're under attack. Their jobs. Remember, you got protections and push the issue. Make it go to the court. Show those judges up. Make them come to right decisions. But I've come to tell everybody, there's always been a Pharaoh in every era of existence since the beginning of history. But every Pharaoh, God's people have overcome the Pharaohs. Sometimes God will kind of let things get a certain way so that you can be tested and to see how you're going to come out. There used to be a song we sang, please be patient with me. God is not through with me. When I come through, when God gets through with me, I shall come forth as pure gold. There's a testing season. You stay strong, be resilient during the testing, and run to the spiritual. Paul talks about living in the flesh and living in the spirit. Run to the spiritual. These are times like this where you stand on. Have you ever been to surgery? If you go to surgery, you know, everybody has the concern about being put out. And when you go there, I don't care what tribe you come from. When I say tribe, I mean what nation, how many people you got in your circle. It's just you and and that anesthesiologist and that surgery team in there, and you're depending on a mighty God to get you through that surgery and wake you up. This is what we're going through, that kind of a season. No matter how stacked the decks are, how badly the deck is stacked against you. The executive branch, a weak, spineless congressional branch. I know that's not the legislative branch is the word I'm looking for. The courts are showing no backbone. In spite of all of that, there's a God who rules the land. You keep your faith in him and you do the right thing. And listen, I want to tell every citizen of this nation whose skin is brown or black, make a copy of your birth certificate and keep it on you. Make a copy of your birth certificate and keep it on you. And if you are immigrant, make copies of all of your documents. Don't keep your originals, because we don't know the integrity of this group that's going around. But keep your copies of all of your documents. And a search warrant has to be signed by a judge. ICE can't just tear down your door legally if they don't have a sign. If they're coming on an ICE warrant, they cannot legally tear down your door. A judge's search warrant, yes, they can, and cooperate. Okay, just want to share that with you. Keep your heads up. Be encouraged. Pharaoh's strong right now, but God is strong, and he's lasting. He's from everlasting to everlasting. Ain't come to preach tonight. Okay, back with it. I am blessed tonight to have
preacher.
It's gotta know how to inform and inspire and educate without, incurring. We were told today of a person who put a anti-47 meme on Facebook, I think it was, and that person was arrested. They're now wearing an ankle brace. They took all of their cars, all of their devices, and they're not allowed to be on social media. These are the kind of infringements on our rights that we're living in. So along with putting our faith in God, we got to use the wisdom and judgment that he's given us also. Miss Keisha, let me ask you this. For a young person today that is, I think you kind of said you're like I am. I evolved into law enforcement. That was my dad's, and I never thought that's the route I would go. It was the chief of police, Chief Garrett, who ended up working with Nat Glover there in Jacksonville. He went back to Jacksonville I think he was an undersheriff or something there, who recruited me and to come on the University of North Florida. He said, "Man, come here and get this free education." And I said, "Well, I'm a preacher, man. I can't shoot nobody." He said, "The scripture doesn't say thou shalt not kill. It says thou shalt not murder." I took his word, had a 7-year career. What would you say to somebody who's even contemplating today, a minority person that's contemplating this field?
I would say that if this is your heart's desire and you have a desire to serve in this capacity, I would say go forward. We need more good, qualified people, in this profession. So I encourage people everywhere I go. It is literally one of the most, selfless professions that you can be in, So it's really hard nowadays, though, it has changed over time. So, but I think that we need good people, and I wouldn't want anybody to be discouraged, because I think that for me, my pastor said always used to say, he says, wherever you go, the place should be better because you're there. People should be better because you're there. And that's always been my mindset. So I think that people that want to be in this profession, they have to see themselves as an asset, as a game changer, and join a police department.
But, when you're young, you don't think about your mortality. In fact, it was 2 years after I went on the department, we lost also on Christmas Day. And that was the first time Daytona had lost someone in 30-some years. And that was a real eye-opener for me. It made me no more running through buildings recklessly and all of that kind of stuff. But Sergeant Pete Mulligan, I don't know, he probably was retired when you got on in JSO. And while I was contemplating a career and I was contemplating the dangers and all of that, and he said to me, and I guess he had been on the department at that point about 30 some years. He said in 30 some years, I've only had to pull my gun 3 times that I might actually really, it was a threat that I might have to use it.
Mm-hmm.
And that gave me a little calm and consolation. You also had the studies that showed that after so many years, the guys or the officers' hands got closer and closer to the gun. What would you say to someone who has apprehensions about the safety of the career?
Well, I think that, again, I think it goes back to, I tell people you want to be in a profession and doing a job that every day you get up and you love to do, and, for the profession, especially police officers, majority of police officers, they just really have a deep passion to serve, and to help people and put bad jokers in jail, so you really don't even think about the risks a lot of times, but that's why you train and you prepare and you become proficient in firearms and defensive tactics. So I think that overall the goal you should be thinking about, what you're going to love to do every day. The saying that, find a job that you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I think that's true,
That's so awesome. I just love the fact that you are accentuating what really police work is supposed to be about, serving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
LAPD has this as a slogan, and many others have, to serve and protect. That is a great slogan. And I didn't intend to talk about my little mini career.
No, I love that.
In law enforcement, but
yeah.
I was blessed while working narcotics to jump in a house one time where the lady was trying to destroy some DEA cocaine and push people out the way and grab it before it flushed down the toilet. It was our cocaine. They grabbed it and saved it. And I got all kind of accommodations. That's probably the most spectacular thing I did. But what really
got excited when you talk about it too. I hear extra excitement in your voce. That's what I'm talking about. That type of passion.
It's bringing back the youth of an archaic person. That's what it's doing. But if I were to contemplate my career, the most satisfying thing I ever did was, you remember back in the day, you guys got JEA, but a lot of the state, the East Coast down here is FPL. And a lady who used to sell food, an older lady used to sell food, and there was an area where there were 3 little, can I say juke joints? Everybody know what that still is. 3 little juke joints, and they call it the bottom. That every Friday, Saturday, and Sunday nights they were really inhabited. It looked like black. What's the street in New Orleans? What's the big street? Not Beagles. What's the street in New Orleans?
Yeah.
My mind is.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
But anyway, that's what it would look like. People would be there, and she would sell, and that's how she supported herself. Mm-hmm. And one Saturday morning, FPNL cut her lights off and her power off accidentally, and she was there with I think it's about $400 worth of meat that she was on the verge of losing. And a sergeant who had a kind of compassionate heart allowed me to stay on the scene until we worked through that over the phone with FPNL, and they got somebody out. There was no remote cut. So they got somebody out and got her lights turned back on. That is the most satisfying action that I had as a police officer.
And those stories happen every single day with officers all across this country. And unfortunately, you have those bad apples that steal the limelight. You know what I mean? But you're right. I mean, so rewarding. When I go places and people like, you help me, you help me, you help me. I'm just like, what greater feeling, That's why we were born and put on this earth to serve, to help others, to make a difference. That's right. And I know without a doubt that I made a difference in my 24-year career. And I'm so proud of that,
You blessed me from a distance, and I mean that. I knew you perfectly originally through my brother, and I just was so. I'm inspired by a person, far younger than I. Just inspired to see the zest, and when you ran, I just say, we may not get there, but that's going to inspire so many others.
Right.
And
exactly.
Yes, and so I just
And when I read, I said, you cannot compromise your morals and your values at all. I know that several people were like, if you don't go negative or row, you can't win. And I want you to know, I said, I don't want to win that bad. I want to win on truth or lose on truth. But no, I never compromised my integrity, because the end goal was for me to make a difference, on a higher level, like I had always done. So I'm very proud of that race, and I get so many compliments about how I carried myself, right? And that means a lot because you only have your name.
Yeah, you well represented so many of us. I mean, I know there was a female population, and who knows? God's got still greatness. Maybe it's not to be the first female or first Black female sheriff of Duval County. He's got even greater things.
Right.
We're going to pivot over to Black excellence in the military, and we have a lot of things. A lot of local, and I say local, I'm a citizen of both counties, South Florida and Duval, South and North Florida. And I did a lot of research myself, and I work with I meet with a group of senior citizens, senior men on Mondays, and I was thinking, man, if I could just get a good military person. And he's a retired Navy SEAL. He apparently couldn't be with us tonight. He told me it was going to be tenuous as whether or not he'd be able to be here. But we want to just remember, we're bigger than just, I know when we talk about Blacks in the military, everybody goes directly to the Tuskegee Airmen, and they are to really be applauded because what they did was they protected the fighters that actually went. They were not allowed in combat, but they protected our bombers and everything over onto the missions when they went from from America to another, Europe or wherever we were at war, and they have gained their notoriety, have deserved the notoriety that they have gained. And I'm just wondering, Madam Producer, can you get a picture of the Tuskegee Airmen? And there is in fact, I got it, Mac. I'm coming. There is in fact a great movie with Terrence Howard. And we like to recommend, that you all check it. We got a brief snippet, just a little introduction about them. Let's see something. Let's see that short video about the Tuskegee Airmen, and hopefully it'll whet your appetites to move on and look at that movie starring Terrence Howard.
They were pioneers who blazed a trail through the war-torn skies over Europe. Before the Tuskegee Airmen of World War II, no Black American had ever been a U.S. military pilot. After the Tuskegee Airmen, the U.S. military would never be the same. Widespread discrimination prevented African Americans from flying during the First World War. For the next 20 years, the pressure would slowly build to allow Black pilots to serve in the sky. Finally, in 1941, the Army launched what it called an experiment, the segregated 99th Fighter Squadron. That squadron would train at an airfield near Tuskegee Institute in Alabama, and thus the Tuskegee Airmen were born. To be clear, not every airman was a pilot. For every man who flew, there were 10 keeping him in the air, men and women, military and civilian, who served on ground duty support, like mechanics, supply personnel, cooks, and more. And not all were Black. Some were white or Latino or Native American. One notable woman who helped the Tuskegee Airmen take off into history was the First Lady of the United States. Eleanor Roosevelt visited the squadron in 1941 and insisted a Black pilot take her up, and that photographs would be taken. These photographs helped convince President Franklin Delano Roosevelt to send the unit into action, first in North Africa and later in Europe. The 99th, along with other squadrons, would later form the 332nd Fighter Group in Europe, their planes boasting tails painted bright red. In Europe, the airmen would fly more than 15,000 sorties, completing an unequaled 1,500 combat missions, all while showing great courage, skill, and dedication. Among their decorations, 150 distinguished flying crosses. Squadron leader Benjamin O. Davis Jr. would eventually rise to the rank of 3-star general, receiving a 4th star post-retirement. The Tuskegee Airmen were deactivated in 1946. The experiment a great success, but more than that, the brave flyers had proved themselves in combat, and their performance helped pave the way for desegregation of the military in 1948. Today, the National Park Service's Tuskegee Airmen National Historic Site in Alabama helps tell their story and preserves their memory for all time.
Certainly, the Tuskegee Airmen were trailblazers, and they were a spectacular specialized division. But we certainly want to honor our pioneers, the first blacks in the military, and those who rose to reach the status of black excellence in the military, in the Coast Guard, the Navy, and the Army. And Mac, you know we're not going to forget the Marines. My brother, along with you, was a Gyrene Marine, and our father was a Montfort Point Marine.
Wow.
The Montfort Point Marines were that's the original Dozell Varner. The Montfort Point Marines were the first black Marines in the Corps, and we have the distinction of our dad being one of those Montfort Point Marines. They say they were trained in Parris Island. Well, it's kind of off of Parris Island where that group was trained. Mac, I think you and Amp had an opportunity. I know you guys were trained actually in Parris Island, but they were the trailblazers in the Marines. And after the desegregation, my dad did in fact engage in combat over in World War II, and he would tell stories about having to physically fight the Japanese and everything. So we just honor all of our men and women in the armed forces to have reached that status. Miss Keisha, did you know General Chappie James out of Jacksonville? Did you actually know him, or was he a little bit before you? Before
me, yes.
Well, let me tell you what was just so exciting to me when I was doing research for this segment. He actually was a Tuskegee Air person. Right when it was disbanding, he was a Tuskegee Air person. I knew he was from Jacksonville. But what excited me beyond anything was when I found out that his name was not Chappie. His name was James. Wasn't James, Clifford James. But his brother's name, his name was James, and his brother's name was Charles. No, Daniel. That's it. Thank you. His brother's name was Charles, and they called his brother Chappie. And he took his brother's name. Out of respect for him and admiration for his big brother.
Wow.
And, my little piece of it. There were several pillars on the east side, as Kim calls it, out east when it was out east. There was Mr. James at Gilbert High School. There was Coach Thompson, the football coach. There was Buster Ford, who owned the restaurant. He was one of you guys' predecessors at one of the black police officers. He was a detective. And there was Reverend C.B. Daly, Reverend Hughes, and there was Dozell Varner at the boys' home. But Mr. James was a legend. And to know that his brother, who we knew more nationally, Chappie James, he so respected his brother, who was a principal over at Gilbert. And I can say that I actually knew Mr. James.
Oh, yeah. Well, I actually went to Gilbert, so.
Oh, you went to Gilbert?
Connection, yes.
Oh, wow.
Send us way over there. Yeah, I went to Gilbert.
Oh, man. So we got Gilbert and UCF.
That's right.
That is so awesome.
You and I are more connected than Kim.
Oh, man, that is so awesome.
I'd be mad.
So doing this, it just led from one thing to the other. And when I looked at somebody had there was an old crumpled sheet of paper and they just uploaded it, the history of Gilbert High School. And Gilbert High School had about five schools that still exist that were named after principals of Gilbert High School. Rufus C. Paynes, I think, was the initial principal at Gilbert. Eugene J. Butler and Matthew William Gilbert was, we're out of the Bethel Church. He was a pastor in Jacksonville. I
didn't know any of this. This is why this is so important.
So there's such a connection. And when I say that there were pillars of the community, and I a lot of people saying, well, we abandon our communities. I'm not hung up on that. That's why we fought for integration, to be able to go to higher heights and to get to bigger places. It don't mean we abandon. We still, I respect him because he loves out east, and that's home for me. So I spent more time out east than I did over on the west side. So I love out east. But Mr. James was really, I mean, those are the guys you look up to, who made a difference. And to know that his brother, who we know nationally is Chappie James, the military first black four-star general in the Air Force or in the armed forces, and to know that he took the nickname from his brother just made me feel all the more special.
Yes, I agree. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, what a blessing. And Mac is one of our, from the time we started this show during the pandemic, Mac has always been here with us. And he and my brother Anthony, I think they did basic together. I think they went in on the buddy plans, but they both served in the Marines. And so we just want to say the military is always a viable option. I had to learn. I used to do these college tours when I was with the school system. I did them on my own. I never knew spring break until the last couple of years because I took kids on college tours. By the way, we went to Tuskegee one year. The government has really poured into their aerospace and their aeronautic program. And if that's someone's, somebody, that's a great institution to go to get that degree and be a part of all of that rich history. But I had to learn everybody's not going to go to college. So there are careers out there, such as the military, such as law enforcement, that will do you serve and you make a fantastic contribution to humankind by serving. Miss Keisha, you got any closing comments? I hate to see this hour come to an end.
I know. I've enjoyed it so much. I'm so happy that you reached out and I finally could get on the show. It's been a long time.
Thank you so much.
The timing is good. The timing is good. I'm just so grateful. I'm honored, so much to be grateful for. I tell people I don't have nothing to complain about. God's been so amazing over the last year, with my husband, all the things that's happened to my husband, and God has answered all of our prayers and continue to answer them. So I just want to live my life that will be pleasing to him and to show him outwardly, really how much we appreciate his love for us,
So thank you. I am inspired by you from a distance. I see the spirituality. I see the anybody who is involved in a relationship and you really want to go to the next step and you're just scared because it's popular. People don't get married anymore. Look at this couple. Look at them on Facebook. There's an enduring love. There's a man who loves his wife. There's a wife who loves her husband. She's been around. We're great through several health issues, and the one we experienced a few years ago, God it brought him to a great level, and just see the love that they have. I was looking at your picture the other day, and I saw your son. I said, "Is that what are they doing with Bronny James?" And that was your son.
Oh my goodness! Everybody say that. That blow up my son's head. Yeah.
I hope he plays better basketball than Bronny. I'm just joking.
That's funny. But I'll just tell you this. I am a new author. I wrote my first children's book. It's called Officer Star. And then we started a small nonprofit called Tisha's Hands 6 years ago in memory of my twin sister who passed away. Yes. So I'm busy, so that's my book. And really the series really build upon some of the, things that helped me become who I am. So you see, I'm the character in that book.
How can we get that?
Well, I'm working right now to get it in the bookstore. So, but if somebody wants it, they can reach out to you and we can make it happen now.
Okay. You got dialogue with Dozell. Just contact us. We'll make sure to put you in connection where you can get it. It's not on Amazon yet, is it?
Not yet.
Okay. We'll make sure you get that book and tell everybody about it, you all. When you share this program out and you tell people what a great program this is and they see it during the week, tell them to commit to getting that book. We want to encourage our sisters because that story needs to get out.
Yes.
And we're just so grateful. Keisha, thank you so much for being with us tonight. You have helped to make this a great show.
Likewise. Thank you so much.
Bless your heart. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Listen, as I see it, if Kim was here tonight, he would say, as I see it. Here's how I'm going to see it. Keisha just put the rap on the show as a whole. Her genuine, her great character, her spirituality, her sense of servanthood, and all that she's about shows us that there are still great people who serve in law enforcement. Black excellence is all across the gamut of America. And you know what? They can't stop us from teaching us. Not that we want to be segregated or removed from anybody else, but we want to make sure that our story is told. There's a young person right now who's going to hear about Miss Keisha's story and hear what she overcame. I didn't know that part of it. What she overcame to rise to the ranks. And I'm not just talking about the ranks of a chief on a police department. I'm talking about the ranks of the great person and the high character, moral, and servanthood that she exemplifies. That's what we see tonight. We see that we are great across the board, and we don't have to go way back in history. They're right here amongst us. Jesse Jackson is one of my heroes of all time, and I unashamedly I claim him. Amongst us still, his health is waning, but amongst us still. There are so many heroes. Will you be a hero? Maybe it's as a police officer. Maybe it's a career in the military. Your name has greatness attached to it. Run to it. Dialogue with Dozell. Next week, we're going to look at Black activism, excellence in activism. We want you to be here with us again. Tell everybody about the night show. Dialogue with Dozell. We out. We love you now.